Hi, I just found out some incredible new information in relationship to your mind and the way it works. It's actually quite profound, and it may be really hard for you to believe that it's true, but I'm going to prove it to you. And then I'm going to explain to you how it's creating suffering in your life. And then I'm actually going to give you an exercise that's going to show you how to get out of the suffering and to use this new information to your advantage. So here's the information. Neuroscientists have discovered that 80%, okay, I'm going to say it again, 80% of what you are thinking from day to day is not actually true. Now you might be thinking, how is that possible? How is it possible that 80%, that's a lot, that's a lot of your mental capacity is actually not true? The reason for this is because your mind is programmed like a software system between the ages of 0 and 7, and it has no capacity to logically reason through what it's witnessing. And so, if you have, for instance, a parent who comes home from work, they don't like their job, and they're really grumpy, right? You may have interpreted as you were a kid that they're actually angry with you, that you are the problem. And so anytime anyone comes in with a particular look on their face, whether it be a boss at work, whether it be just somebody at the grocery store, somebody at a PTA meeting, right? Could even be your teenage daughter has a particular look, you internalize it as having done something wrong and they're mad at you. Now, the thing is this: when you have 80% of what you're thinking that is not true, you cannot actively have a successful life. Now, I'm going to prove to you right now that that 80% exists. I'm going to ask you a question. What color is a yield sign in the United States? What color is a yield sign inside the United States? 95% of the people that I ask this of in podcasts, on stages, I've talked to thousands upon thousands of people about this yield sign question. And 90+% immediately picture a yellow and black yield sign. Okay. In 1974, Congress voted that they were no longer going to use the yellow and black yield sign. And so they were going to use red and white. By 1979, all of the yellow and black yield signs had been completely replaced with red and white ones. Now, here's the problem. Your mind does not have the capacity to update itself. It can't pass a red and white yield sign and suddenly your mind goes, oh, wow, that's no longer black and yellow. It's red and white. I need to update that information. The other thing that I need you to be aware of is that the mind cannot update with just more information being put into the mind. This is the reason why, if you are anything like me and the women that I work with, and men too, then the books you read, the courses you take, all of the work that you've done on yourself, it doesn't really make that big of a difference. Have you noticed that it just gives you more information? In fact, if anything, it'll just tell you what's wrong with you. It won't actually give you the information on how to update your mind. And that's because your mind can't update itself with more information. Not the triggers, not the habitual responses that you go through on a regular basis, not your fears, your anxieties, your worries, your overwhelm, what frustrates you, what creates doubt and uncertainty in your mind, defensiveness, what you procrastinate on. All of these things that are triggers and things that we're trying to work on to become more productive, more patient, more kind, more easygoing, more confident, to believe in ourselves, to get over our financial lack issues, all of these things, no matter how many books and courses you take, it will not make a difference. In fact, I hate to tell you this, but if a year from now I ask you what color a yield sign is inside the United States, you will still say yellow and black. Even though you know now that it's red and white, you will not be able to recall the information. Your mind will know that it's a trick. Your mind will know that there's something wrong, that you've got it wrong somehow, but you will not be able to pull up an actual picture of a red and white yield sign. However, if I gave you a red crayon and a white piece of paper and I had you draw in a red and white yield sign, you will remember it for the rest of your life because the body updates the mind. This is why when we have trauma, we get it locked into our mind and we have the same fears, the same issues when a similar situation that's traumatic, that is like the trauma we had when we were a kid, happens. It's also why people get PTSD when they are traumatized in the physical body, because it is the body that updates the mind. Now, here's the second thing that researchers have discovered. Researchers have discovered that 90% of the thinking that you have on any given day is the exact same thing that you thought yesterday. So you're having 90% of the same thinking over and over and over again in your life, which is why your life doesn't change, which is why you will go to a retreat, spend 4 days. You just know inside your heart that when you get home, your whole life is going to change. And by Wednesday, you're doing exactly the same thing and nothing has changed because you cannot put more information into your mind and have it change the actual subconscious programming that exists. Now, the good news I have for you is that you have what I call an internal guidance system. You are actually born with a system that is physically located in the body and it will update your mind. When you feel a lump in your throat, a tightness in your chest, or kind of a clenched feeling in the solar plex area of your body, that is literally guidance that the 80% is activated. That the 80% of something, meaning something that's not true, okay, that it is sharing with you that tight feeling that you are thinking a thought that is not true for you, that is no longer relevant for who you are. So I'm going to give you an example of this. For years, I thought my dad didn't like me. We did not get along. Every time we got together, I would cry or he would get mad. He would say something that would hurt my feelings. There was just all of this proof that my dad and I did not get along and we never would. Now, when something is not true, you will feel a tightness in the body. I call that tightness closed, being closed. Okay. I'm going to talk more about this in a minute. I'm going to share with you an exercise that you can play with so that I can prove to you that you can not only get rid of the 80% and update it to what is actually true for you today, but that you are suffering because of this 80% that's not true. So I was driving home for Christmas, and it's a long drive. It was an 8-hour drive. And I was thinking about how much I don't really want to go and how my dad and I don't get along and how much he doesn't even really love me. And I realized that I was tight. I was closed. That means that I am actually having thoughts that are not true. Now, I want to let you know, I have a lot of proof from all of the interactions from my dad and I since I was a very, very little girl that kind of back up my story that we don't get along and he doesn't like me. So it doesn't really matter how much proof you have. That does not make the thing inside your head true. All right? So I began to play with my thinking to try to find what is true. And I'm going over all kinds of different things, scenarios, and I finally hit upon the thought, well, he gets along with my brother. My brother and him get along, and I opened. When you hit upon a thought that's actually accurate, true, and in alignment and is going to work for you, that tightness immediately releases. In the release, a new neural pathway takes hold. In fact, out of the thousands and thousands of students that I work with, when you get an opening thought to replace the closing one that's not true, you can't even go back to the old thought that's not true because you physically have a deep discernment that it's not true. You can't even hold that thought anymore. I want you to think about this. So I kept playing with this thought as I was driving home for Christmas. And the thought that I finally came to that gave me a big opening, because there's different levels of opening based on how true something is that my dad didn't know how to be a dad to a girl. He wrestled with my brother. He bought my brother a particular set of toys. He knew what to buy boys. And nobody ever taught him how to be a dad to a girl. And so he would do things that were like treating me like a boy. And then I would get upset and cry, and he would get frustrated. And it finally got to a place where he quit. He quit trying. And in his not trying, because all he could do was fail, I saw it as being unloved. But that's not true. He did love me. He was just so frustrated and hurt that he couldn't get it right. I have hundreds of stories of people who have taken this 80% of their thinking that's not true and been able to feel the closing when it happens, rework through the practices that I teach. Like I have a game, it's called the Recreating You game. It's 5 simple days with 5 simple practices. And by the end of the 5 days, you've actually begun rewiring your mind and you feel completely different. When you have that sucking, sinking feeling, like in the middle of a business meeting, when you are driving home and all of a sudden that text message comes through from someone and you get that horrible tight feeling inside because you think that you've done something wrong, when you wake up in the morning from a party and all of a sudden you feel like you shouldn't have said something that you said, when the bill comes in, right, through email or through the mail, and you open it up and oh my gosh, it's so much more than you actually can afford. And you get that sick, awful feeling inside because you're thinking, I can't afford this. They're mad at me. My boss doesn't like my idea. All the things that I just mentioned, those are all the 80% untrue thinking that the researchers are finding. And you were born with an internal guidance system. I call it the IGS. And through a series of practices, you can rewire your mind away from the 80%. And what happens when you rewire your mind is that you are relaxed and happy and confident. You know how to make decisions. Doubt goes away. Uncertainty about the decisions that you are making goes away. A level of confidence begins to show up because you can physically feel that you belong in the room, that your idea is a good idea. You are able to understand how to move yourself and your finances into prosperity. You no longer believe that people are mad at you. I remember one time I was at a party and I was sitting on a couch and a friend of mine walked in the door and I was quite far away. And she looked around the room and she glared at me and then went and walked right past me into the kitchen. I thought that I had done something wrong and that she was mad at me. I remember being in a conversation with somebody and I could no longer like pay attention to the conversation because I was going through inside my head of every encounter that I've had, what I said, what I did, what could possibly be wrong with my friend to give me such an awful, ugly, glaring stare. Finally, I decided that I was going to just go up to her and ask, why was she upset with me? As I walked into the kitchen and got up closer, she said, oh my gosh, Zen, it's you. Who's that person over there? And I go, what do you mean? She goes, I left my glasses in my other purse and I can't see. And then she glared at the other person in her little squinty eyes and said, who is that? And I told her who it was. And the whole time, what I had been thinking was untrue. Now, where do these things come from? Where does this untrueness come from? Here's the way it works. When you're little, you have stress themes. You are intended, when you're born, your mind's intention is to bring you love, okay? Is to have people around you to love you, and your mind is here to love you and get you protected from danger. It doesn't know what danger is when you're a baby. It doesn't know that love has nothing to do with your dad coming home from a really bad day's work and you're going, Daddy, Daddy, and he just needs a moment to land. And just says, hey, babe, and walks past you. That's abandonment. That's the first time you're abandoned. And so what happens is that you have these themes, these stress themes, things that always cause you to feel as if you're on the verge of not being protected and not being loved. But then what happens is as you get older, you produce stress defenses. This is where the people pleasing comes in. This is where the avoidance behavior comes in. This is where you have found a way to get your needs met by acting in a particular way that's inauthentic for you. This is where that 80% that they're talking about of your mind producing something that's not true, this is where it becomes even more of a problem, because these stress defenses that you're using in order to avoid the pain or have the love happen or protect yourself against danger, the stress defenses themselves are the actions that you take that are inauthentic for yourself. And unfortunately, they don't work as an adult. So here's what I want you to do. All right. It's the first exercise that I give people in my Recreating You game. Up until this point, when you felt a lump in your throat, a tightness in the chest, or this sick feeling in your stomach, you've labeled it anxiety, worry, fear, overwhelm, frustration, guilt, irritation, defensiveness, impatience, procrastination, and more. Whenever you feel any of those things, you are closed inside. You will feel a tightness because they're not true. If something is true, you will feel a neutral, centered sense of self and discernment, or even a slight expanded feeling of deep knowing. You've felt this your whole life, okay? So whenever you feel that list that I just gave you, here's what I need you to do. We have to do a neural pattern interrupt, because these things have been running for so long on autopilot that you actually have to stop them from moving forward. You stop them before you move into your stress defense. So you're like, oh my gosh, there's that tight feeling. I'm feeling irritated with this person in my life, but I'm tight, which means what I'm thinking about the person is not true. So you say, I am closed. The way I like to think of it is you're closing down the physical energy, life force energy in your body, so that you can't produce something, manifest something, create something that you don't want. So you say, I'm closed. The sensation I'm feeling is closed. That means, and this is the second part of it, that what I'm thinking is not true or not going to happen. You're digging into that 80% in that exact moment. I am closed, pattern interrupt. You're stopping it from moving forward. That means what I'm thinking is not true or not going to happen. What you're going to find is, because that statement that I just gave you is true, you're immediately going to lighten. You're going to feel a slight release of the tension. It could be a little release, but there's a little bit left, or it could be completely gone. I want to prove to you that, number one, what you're thinking isn't true, so that we can get you to a place where you're going to have true thinking. The true thinking is what is going to make you successful in your life. And true thinking is opening, which means you get rid of all the suffering. The second thing that we're doing here is we're connecting your mind to the internal guidance system so that they can begin to work together. Now, this is the first exercise that I teach every single student that I have. Play with it for a few days, and then I'm going to come back and I'm going to explain, when you're irritated, what is the untrue thought? When you're frustrated, what is that untrue thought? When you're procrastinating, how do you move out of procrastination? It's always closing, and what you're thinking about the thing that you're procrastinating on is part of that 80% that's not true. We're going to get rid of as many yellow yield signs in your mind as we possibly can. That's what this YouTube channel is about. Is we're going to teach you, I'm going to teach you how to rewire your entire mind to be the incredible adult that you are, so that all of the courses that you've taken, all of the resources that you have at your fingertips, the retreats, the therapy, all of it can actually show up now, because the old programming that's a knee-jerk reaction from your childhood is going to eventually go away. This whole process takes between 3 to 18 months, depending on how much time you put in. The more that you stop yourself in the middle of the tightness and say, I am closed, that means what I'm thinking is not true or not going to happen, the faster the rewiring begins. All right. My name is Zen Cryar DeBrucke. I'm here to help. If you want to find me, you can find me at fearfreehuman.com. That's where all my programs are. They're totally affordable. And you can also reach me at support@fearfreehuman.com. Because that 80% that's all wrong, it's all based in fear. And you can become a fear-free human by rewiring your mind towards what is actually true for you today. All right, I'm sending you love and blessings. Mwah! Go forth and have an amazing week.